Welcome back to the Engineered Angler. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Franco. I'm a professional engineer with an absolute passion for fishing, making lures, and just general tinkering and experimentation. I make these videos just to show you how an engineer might approach lure design and building lures, and building tools to actually make your lures and paint your lures. If you've been watching this channel, then you probably know what this is. This is a brand new lure bow that I just made, and my lure bows are what I use to hold my lures while I'm painting them, clear coating them, and then turning them so the clear coat finishes smooth and even. And it's a real simple little device. The beauty of it is that it's self-tensioning, and this way you don't have to make any adjustments for the size of your lure. It just adjusts to it. And what I really love about it is that I don't have to touch this lure after I have it on here. I can put it on my lure bow, paint it, clear coat it, never having to touch it. And I can transfer it to my turning chamber, plug it into the little holder and turn it on. And then I can just close it and forget it until it's ready to come out. This makes handling your lure while you're doing all the finish work really simple and easy. And it also makes creating your own turner real simple too, because these are all really easy to come by parts. It's just CPVC parts, easy to work with. You can just use hand tools to make them. The key is the lure bow and its connecting end. Now, while the lure bow won't hold every size of lure, in this configuration, it'll hold a lure as small as this, which is only about 2¼ inches between those two eyes, to lures as big as 5½ to 6 inches, and with a little bit of modifications, even slightly bigger lures. Forgot what a nice rattle that has. And it holds the lure really securely, doesn't allow it to wobble back and forth, which can cause your clear coat to sort of sag to one side. And it makes it so easy to have a turner just about anywhere. Anything that's turning, you can add a connector. I have this as just a little auxiliary turner outside my main turner, just in case I need to turn something while other things are curing. So I'm not really trying to sell you on this idea. In fact, I've kind of kept it to myself for a long time. I designed this lure bow ages ago when I started to actually really paint a lot of lures, and to me it just seemed like such a clever design that I kind of was hesitant to share it too much. But since then I've shared a lot of the ways I'm holding lures. So once I start moving to lures that are a little larger, maybe heftier, maybe they have a little more weight, and I don't want to risk the lure bow sort of sagging too much, I switch to this other design that I made, which will handle really large lures and really small lures. And I can easily put it in my turner and turn it with all the other ones at the same time. And I've already made a video tutorial on how to make these telescoping lure holders. First, let's take a close look at the one I just made. So you'll notice that it's actually made from 2 pieces of wire that slide on each other to form the bow. And the only other component is a small piece of 1/2 inch CPVC that's 1 inch to 1¼ inch long. In this design, I made the little base 1 inch long, but typically I like to go 1¼ inch. It's just easier to grab to put it in and out of the sockets. All right, so let's start the drawing. So it's a continuous piece of wire with a small leg that goes into the CPVC, which goes over it right about there. And these are all soft radiuses. You don't want to bend these in a really tight radius, so use the fat part of your bending pliers. And that little loop is simply the wire coming out and forming. And that loop is made on the horizontal, but then later it's bent upwards so that if you looked at it from the side, it would look like this, with this angle right around 40 degrees. It's whatever it takes to get the 2 wires to bind with each other as they go through those eyes. And that's it. Those are the dimensions. That's the simple part. Let me show you how you make the bends and how you assemble it. So when it comes to the type of wire and the diameter of the wire, it's going to be a little bit dependent on the weight of the lures you're making. And if you're making lures that don't get much heavier than 40 to 50 grams, using wire, stainless steel wire that's 0.04 inches or about 1.02 millimeters is sufficient. That'll work well and it's easy to bend. If you're going to go slightly above that in weight, or even a lot more above that in weight, then I would recommend going with 0.05 or 0.051 is what I have here, which runs, I think it's 1.27, something like that, millimeters. And you can go slightly heavier, maybe even 0.055 before it starts getting really difficult to bend and get those really tight twists on the end. I don't really recommend using a wire that comes in a coil, even a loose coil like this, because it just becomes a little more difficult to get those nice straight sections that you need to have this thing slide. I rely a lot on my jeweler's pliers, which are nice because they're stepped and I can choose the radius I want to turn it on. You'll also need some little pliers to sort of manhandle these things a little bit. I like to make the base part first. So I'll measure 2¼ inches and I'll make my first bend, and I'll use a medium size bend radius to get it to come around. And that's got it right there. Now I need to bring it all the way around 180 degrees to form the part that goes inside the tube. And I'll use the widest part of my radius here. You bend around what you haven't measured. In other words, this leg has been measured, so I don't want to bend that around because I'll eat up wire. You want to bend around what's not been measured. There we go. This is CPVC tubing, 1/2 inch, and this will fit in there perfectly, as you can see. And I'm going to need to cut this at 1¼ inch. Now to make a bend for the riser, I got to measure 1¼ inch. You'll see it'll slide into that mark. So I'll bend it up in line with the other bend. The next bend is 1 inch above that last one. I'm going to have to cut off the rest here at 4½ inches. All right, now I got to bend this loop, and that's the really kind of challenging part. And to bend the loop, I use the smallest part of this bending, these pair of pliers. If you have issues with hand strength, this can be challenging. Now once I've got it all the way around like that, you can see it's offset. I'm going to go ahead and put a little shoulder in it by bending back, and that'll align it with the original shaft here. The last little trick is to grab that eye and bend it upwards like that on about a 40-degree angle, which I'm not expecting anybody to actually be able to get a 40-degree angle exactly or anything, but you want it offset, not quite 45, but pretty close. And then the lure hook, which goes on the end of this piece, is pretty easy to do. All you need to do is bend it over perpendicular to these other bends on this one, and then we'll put a little bit of an offset on it so you can see it's going to be easy to get it on there and it'll stay on pretty well. Alright, let's go ahead and make the tail end. What you have to do first is make the friction eye. Bent around, give it a little extra because I've got to, and now I'm going to put the shoulder in it, tweak it down, there you go. And this one, instead of going up like that one did, I want it to go down. Of course, it's neither here nor there now because there's no other bends in it. Alright, now I've got it bent on that little bit of an offset. And now you have to assemble, because if you don't assemble at this point, it's really tough to get it all put together. So you got to remember, it fits in there like this. So what you want to do is hook it in to this hook on the inside of your turn here. Go ahead and bring it all the way through. And then you've got to kind of finagle this to go through this eye without bending it too hard. And work it all the way through. And there you go. The slider's on there. Now, you can see how soft it slides, and that's okay. That makes it easy to install, but what I'll do is I'll flatten these bends out just a little bit so they cause the friction that is key to having this hold the wire in place. And now I measure out my 4.5 inches on the wire I just installed, and I'm going to bend down perpendicular to my last little eye bend. We want about a 90-degree turn on that. And the last bend is at 1.5 inches. And we're bending that back towards the body of the whole thing. Now we got the essential parts. I just need to cut this so I can make an eye. Now this eye, it's really important. This is kind of a key point here. You have to make it perpendicular to that other eye. So I made the first one sort of flat or perpendicular to all the other bends. So this one is going to be in line with all the other bends. Good distance, and then I'll put a little offset in it to align it with the other one. We'll go ahead and flatten these bends out just a touch, just to increase that that tension. And the way I do it is I like to get it off the wire, slide it down the leg over here, and you just flatten it a little bit. And you can see already we got friction. And I can do this one too. And there we go. Now we got a nice amount of friction that'll hold whenever you put a lure on there really well. And there you go. Now all I got to do is cut the PVC so it'll fit on there, and we'll hot glue it in. Now I'm just going to insert it in the tube, support it with my little paint holder, and fill this with hot glue. All right, and that does it for the build. All right, so here's one I just built, and it's got the thinner wire, and it's a good way to show you some of the little hacks you can use to make this work a little better for maybe for the lures you're using. You can see when I set this in here and I tension it that there's a sag to it. You can see how it forms an arc. Now, when I first designed it, it was exactly what I wanted, because I had a light bulb, a UV light bulb right here, and I had all my lures around it, and so they just sort of went around and had like a nice hollow spot for the bulb, and it worked out perfect. But with this new setup, and with most people's setup, you really don't want the sag. And so the way to take it out is to take this 90-degree and bend it back to an angle somewhere around 50 or 60 degrees. And you can see it straightens it out really nicely. It makes it a little more useful in most people's turners. On occasion, you're going to have a lure that is really long, but not so long that it doesn't fit in here, but long enough so that the tension isn't enough to hold the lure. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to use one of my old ones so I can show you a little hack to get around that problem. All right, here's a classic old lure that's about 4.5 inches, 5 inches long. And it's right at the very end of this lure holder to actually hold it and give it any tension. And so what I like to do is I'll disconnect it from the end, and I'll slide it in actually. Instead of out, I'll slide it in maybe 1/4 inch or so. Then I'm going to give it a twist around so that these two bind up really well. Once you set it back in there, it creates a torque and a helical turn. You can see it's on a helix. You can actually get a little more out of your lure bow by doing that. It'll still hold that lure firmly and securely without any fear that it's going to come off. So I almost forgot about this thing. It looks like it's cooled off. And we've got a nice lure holder that you can extend out. I can grab it with my painting stand, and while it isn't perfect for turning, it will turn. So thank you very much for watching. And I hope this was helpful to somebody. I know a lot of new lure makers are looking at this and thinking, wow, should I make the investment and make all these, or should I still just use a nail in the tail of my lure? Well, with that, I hope this wasn't too big of a yawn and you all got a little something out of it. If you're enjoying these videos, do me a solid and give me a thumbs up. Help me build the channel, and subscribe if you haven't. And if you have ideas, drop a comment. I try to get to all of them and try to answer all of them. I'll see you on the next video.